Congressman Jimmy Patronis is joining us live from his office in D.C. Congressman, you're on the phone now. We want to thank you for taking our call this evening.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Well, I know that you're listening to the play-by-play of what's going on right now. What are you waiting on right now in your office?
So we've just gotten through what's called a cloture vote. So the importance is you've gotten 60 senators now that have come to vote. That shows that they've got at least a body of 60 reaching that threshold to be able to start moving forward towards the short-term spending resolution. And what the Senate's proposing is extending the current funding we have right now, just like what the House already did, where the House's version extended it to November 21st. The Senate is going to extend it to January the 30th. And then there's going to be a little bit of a mini bus, which is going to be 3 appropriations bills that the House has already worked on: military construction, veterans affairs, agriculture. That'll take care of the staff issues, and then the legislative branch, which is going to deal with some security issues. So the other things that will be guaranteed in this is no federal employees are losing their jobs. There's going to be back pay that's going to be put into place. And there's nothing being done with the Affordable Care Act subsidies other than guarantees to have those discussions, since they are not expiring until the end of the year.
And tell me your reaction to tonight's news that it looks like the Democrats are going to vote to end the shutdown, as 8 of them broke ranks and led the charge for this shutdown to end. Tell me, what's your reaction to that tonight?
I'm disgusted. More and more, this is exactly what we have been telling the American public, that this was nothing more than a stall tactic to put blood in the water, to spin up the Democratic base for those elections in Virginia, New York, and New Jersey. This was nothing more than a way to create a heightened awareness, to bring more attention, to raise more money, to ensure that a base showed up and those races turned Democrat. And the American public's being held hostage the whole entire time for this. So, finally, common sense prevailed, but because literally their election day is finally over.
Now, you say you're holding hostage. Now, once the Senate votes, how quickly will the House go back in session and to vote this shutdown? And how long will it take before people can see those paychecks that they haven't gotten give back to them?
So we're on 48 hours notice. So that means as soon as the Speaker, and we're going to have to see these votes come out of the Senate. Once that package leaves the Senate and comes back to the House, we'll essentially have 48 hours to reassemble in Washington, D.C. But all of us are watching this thing on pins and needles. So I think there will be, before the end of the week, you'll see this thing all finalized. I think you'll see Treasury will step up quickly, because they don't want to miss the November 15th pay cycle.
Now, tell me, is it true that part of this new deal calls for people who were previously fired from federal jobs to be brought back?
Correct. So there's a window of time where if you lost your job for being terminated because of the shutdown or scaling back, then you will have your job reinstated. So the furloughed workers will get their back pay, and those from shrinking government. And to my opinion, this is where some of these states, especially the Democrats we've got over, that their federal employees in their districts, they felt guilty that they had put them in a place and compromised them. So this is how they said, all right, I will come back, I will vote to the terms of the clean CR, but I've got to have, reinstatement of these federal employees, or at least you give them the option to be in reinstatement, because somebody went and found employment somewhere else.
And have you talked to the Republican leadership tonight? What do they think about this new deal?
So we haven't gone into a deep dive on it. We had a conference call amongst the freshman class. So there was about 30 of us on the phone, and it was pretty much more or less a wellness call. We didn't do any deep diving of anything, but just kind of sharing at least what are some of the things we've been doing in the district, and how we've been trying to engage our constituents. And, if nothing else, I think it was just good just to hear everybody's voice, because everybody's been all over the country in their districts doing their jobs. and now it's time, hopefully this week, to reassemble. I doubt anything will be done on Tuesday because it's a federal holiday. So I think probably if the Senate does their job, which it looks like they could, then I would think the earliest you'll see action by the House will be on Wednesday. There's some procedural issues that have to be dealt with on Wednesday. If we get a supermajority of the House, that means we have to get a lot of Democrats on board. That means it could be a one and done vote the same day. But there's been a number of House Democrats have already come out and said that they're not voting for it. But we'll see. I mean, they're feeling the same type of pressure that these senators did that were, holding back because of the November elections.
Right, and you mentioned those House Democrats and a couple of the other procedural things as well as the holiday. Other than that, are there any other conflicts which could keep the stalemate going?
No, I really don't think so. The president has been itching to put this to bed. And, this is, I think, part of his strategy was pushing also the filibuster elimination. So the filibuster is what requires 60 votes out of the Senate. What he's saying, get rid of the filibuster and take it down to just 50 votes plus one. If the Senate did that, which I don't think they're going to do now, if they did that, this could speed up the process. But I think that the president finally ripped the Band-Aid off, told him, he says, all right, let's get rid of the filibuster. And I think everybody started shaking on both sides of the aisle because that is a nuclear option. And I think that's what really got the Democrats' attention, that, they can keep on trying to drag this thing out and continue to play a very weak hand of cards. They got their elections in November that they were hoping to get. Now it's time to focus on the American public and do our job.
Now let's talk about these Affordable Care Act subsidies that were responsible for this shutdown and disagreements over that and what should be included in that. Do we think that these negotiations coming up in January or in mid-December rather, what will those discussions look like? Will we come to some sort of resolution on that?
So what I really like is what Senator Scott, our Florida Senator Scott's plan was, and it's really the president came out and advocated for it this week, where the subsidies that are in debate, what would happen, and instead of those subsidies going straight to the insurance companies then setting their rates based on the subsidy being received as a direct payment from the federal government, those dollars will be redirected, and those policyholders in the United States would actually get those dollars in the form of a health savings account. So those dollars would now go to the consumer, and the consumer would be empowered to spend their dollars the way they see fit for their health care needs. So this is one way to me, I think it's a great way to keep some checks and balances as opposed to giving a direct cash payment to the health insurance companies. You're giving a direct cash payment to the policyholders where it has got some guardrails on it, where it's got to be used for access to health care benefits and those related HSA eligible expenditures.
Well, Congressman, we certainly appreciate your time tonight as we watch this happen and play out. Thank you again for taking our call.
Sure, and I thank all of your viewers for being so patient through all of this. We've gotten a lot of phone calls. This has been no fun, and as I've been on all the installations through this crisis that we've gone through the shutdown, I ask every one of our military, I said, what can I do to help? And all they ask is, can you just get the government reopened? Because you know what? These folks have been going without a paycheck. I suspended my paycheck the second the government shut down. So I figured if our men and women in uniform aren't getting a paycheck, I said, I don't want mine either. So, fingers crossed we'll bring this thing in for a landing this week.
Well, fingers crossed, absolutely. Thank you again, Congressman.
Take care.